The station floated in the darkness of space like a giant wheel. Inside, the lights glowed warm and steady. Daehyun walked through the corridors with his bag over his shoulder. Everything here was too big or too small. The doorways adjusted their size when he approached. The air tasted recycled and clean, nothing like Earth. He was tired from the long journey, but he couldn't show it. This was his first real job off-world, and he wanted to do it right. The Academy Station was famous across dozens of star systems. The best and brightest young aliens came here to learn, and now he would be their resident advisor. The administrator who met him was tall and made of something like crystal. It spoke through a translator device that made its voice sound hollow. "You are the human, Daehyun. We hope you will perform better than the previous advisor." Daehyun nodded. "I'll do my best. The junior wing houses 43 students from 12 species. They are all juveniles. You will monitor their health, ensure they attend classes, and maintain order." The crystal being paused. "Some have been difficult. Difficult how? They do not sleep properly. They disrupt others. The previous advisor found them exhausting and resigned." The administrator's facets caught the light. "We chose a human because your species is known for adaptability." That was one word for it. Daehyun had read the files. Humans were considered odd by most of the galaxy, not strong like the warrior races, not brilliant like the ancient ones, not long-lived or heavily armed or naturally armored, just stubborn and strangely good at surviving things that should kill them. His quarters were small but comfortable. The bed adjusted to his weight. The walls could display any scene he wanted. He chose a forest from home, green and quiet. Then he unpacked his few belongings and tried to rest. The sounds woke him 3 hours later. At first he thought it was the station's machinery, a whining, chittering noise that rose and fell. But it had a pattern to it, a rhythm that sounded almost like crying. Daehyun sat up and listened. The sound came from outside his door. He pulled on his jacket and opened the door carefully. 3 small creatures huddled in the corridor. They looked like cats, if cats were the size of large dogs and had 6 legs instead of 4. Their fur was dark with stripes that glowed faintly blue. The stripes flickered on and off in no particular pattern. Their eyes were huge and reflected the corridor lights. They stared at him. He stared back. "Hey," Daehyun said softly. "You okay?" One of them made a sound that his translator picked up as distress. The device in his ear worked hard to turn alien concepts into Korean. No sleep warmth. No pride voice. No den safe. The 3 cubs pressed closer together. They were shaking. Daehyun crouched down slowly. He'd worked with animals on Earth before becoming a xenobiologist. The body language was universal across species, even alien ones. These children were terrified. "Can you tell me your names?" "Tala," the largest one said. "This is Mira, this is Kovu." The names came through the translator with a purring quality. "I'm Daehyun. I'm the new advisor." He kept his voice gentle. "Why are you out here?" "Cannot sleep inside," Tala said. The cub's stripes flickered faster. "Too alone. Too quiet. Too cold. Where are the others?" "The other students?" "They sleep. They are not Felkar. They do not need pride warmth." Daehyun thought about that. He'd read about Felkar in the files. They were a social species that lived in large family groups. The young ones stayed close to adults until they reached maturity. Being alone went against every instinct they had. "How long have you been out here?" "Many nights," Mira whispered. "We try to sleep in room, but we cannot. Something is wrong inside us when we are alone." Kovu, the smallest, was barely holding together. The cub's whole body trembled. "The old advisor said we must adapt, must regulate our own neurochemistry, must learn independence." That was probably technically correct. It was also completely useless advice for scared children. Daehyun felt anger rise in his chest. What kind of person told frightened kids to just deal with it on their own? But getting angry wouldn't help right now. "Okay," he said. "New plan. You 3 are coming with me." The cubs looked at each other with those huge eyes. "Inside your room?" Tala asked carefully. "Yes, you'll sleep in my quarters tonight. We'll figure out something better tomorrow, but right now you need rest." He stood up and walked back to his door. After a moment, he heard the soft padding of paws behind him. The 3 Felkar cubs followed him inside, moving close together. His quarters suddenly seemed very small with 3 large cat aliens in them. Daehyun grabbed the spare blankets from the storage compartment and spread them on the floor beside his bed. "Here, this can be your spot for tonight." The cubs approached slowly. They sniffed the blankets. Then, moving as one unit, they settled down onto them. They pressed close together, their 6 legs tangling up. Their tails wrapped around each other, but their stripes still flickered. They still didn't sleep. Taehyun sat on the edge of his bed and watched them. "What else do you need?" "You said pride voice?" "Yes," Tala said quietly. The sound of the pride. The breathing of many. The heartbeats. The small sounds that say you are not alone. He thought about his little sister back on Earth. She used to have nightmares when she was small. Their mother would sit with her and hum old songs until she fell asleep. It wasn't about the song itself. It was about the presence. The sound of someone nearby who would keep watch. Daehyun started humming. Nothing special, just a tune his mother had sung to him. Low and steady and calm. The 3 cubs' ears perked up. Their stripes stopped flickering quite so fast. He kept humming. Minutes passed. The cubs' breathing began to slow. Their eyes closed halfway. The glow of their stripes settled into a gentle, steady pulse. Tala made a sound that the translator interpreted as safe sound. Daehyun smiled and kept humming. He thought about all the protocols he was probably breaking. All the rules against students in staff quarters. All the proper procedures he should be following instead. Then he looked at the 3 cubs finally starting to relax after who knows how many sleepless nights, and decided he didn't care about the rules. 20 minutes later, all 3 Felkar cubs were deeply asleep. Their stripes glowed soft and steady. Their breathing matched each other's rhythm. They looked peaceful for the first time since he'd met them. Daehyun stopped humming and carefully lay down on his own bed. He was tired, but he stayed awake a little longer, listening to the cubs breathe, making sure they stayed asleep. Outside his window, the stars turned slowly as the station rotated. Somewhere out there was Earth, with its forests and oceans and all the humans who still sang their children to sleep. Maybe that wasn't so primitive after all. Daehyun closed his eyes and let himself rest. Tomorrow would bring questions and problems and probably angry administrators. But tonight, 3 scared children were sleeping safely. That was enough. Morning came with a chime from the station's central system. Daehyun woke to find 3 Felkar cubs still curled on his floor, sleeping deeply. Their stripes glowed soft and content. It was the first time he'd seen them look truly at peace. He got up quietly and went to shower. When he came back, the cubs were stirring. Tala lifted her head and blinked those huge eyes at him. "Good morning," Daehyun said. "We slept," Tala said, and there was wonder in her voice. "We slept the whole night." The other 2 cubs sat up. They looked at each other, then at him. Mira's tail swished back and forth. "Thank you, Advisor Daehyun. You're welcome. Now let's get you 3 to your morning meal before questions start." But it was already too late for that. His communication device buzzed. The message was from Vice Chancellor Thixarak, one of the station administrators. The insectoid wanted to see him immediately. Daehyun sighed. He'd known this was coming. The cubs looked worried. "Are you in trouble?" Kovu asked. "Maybe, but don't worry about it. You 3 go eat breakfast and get to class on time. I'll handle this." He watched them leave, padding down the corridor on their 6 legs. They stayed close together, but they held their heads higher than last night. That was something. The Vice-Chancellor's office was in the administrative tower. Thixarak stood behind a desk, her multiple arms moving in agitation. Her species looked like a cross between a praying mantis and something crystalline. She spoke quickly, her translator working overtime. "Advisor Daehyun, we have regulations. Students cannot sleep in staff quarters. This violates safety protocols, personal space requirements, and 17 different interspecies conduct codes." The cubs couldn't sleep, Daehyun said calmly. They were exhausted and scared. "I helped them." The previous advisor followed proper procedure. He recommended they seek medical intervention for their sleep difficulties. And did they? Thixarak's arms stopped moving. The medical staff found nothing wrong with them physically. Because nothing is wrong with them physically. They're children away from their families, sleeping alone for the first time in their lives. Their species isn't built for that. Then they must adapt. Daehyun felt his frustration growing. They're 12 years old. In human terms, would you tell a human 12-year-old to just adapt to something that goes against every instinct they have? Humans are unusual in how long they coddle their young. Maybe. Or maybe everyone else forgot how to care for their children properly. The words came out sharper than he'd intended. Thixarak's posture stiffened. For a moment, Daehyun thought he'd just lost his job on the first day. Then the vice-chancellor's arms relaxed slightly. The cubs did attend their classes this morning. Their teachers report they were more focused than they have been in weeks. Their health monitors show improved stress levels, because they finally got real sleep. Your method worked, but it is not sustainable or appropriate. Tixarak moved to the window. Outside, the station curved away into the distance. However, we cannot ignore results. You may continue helping the cubs, but you must develop a proper protocol, something that does not involve students sleeping in your quarters. It wasn't permission exactly, but it wasn't a firing either. Daehyun would take it. He left the office and went to find the other two humans on the station. Dr. Hyunji worked in the medical bay, and Jiwoo handled communications. They met in the small human commissary where the food actually tasted like Earth food. So you adopted 3 alien cats on your first night, Hyunji said, smiling. She was older than Daehyun, with laugh lines around her eyes. That's very you. I didn't adopt them. I just helped them sleep. By humming lullabies? Jiwoo asked. He was younger, fresh out of university. That's actually kind of brilliant. Most species don't do that anymore. Don't do what? Sing to their children. Comfort them directly. Most of the galaxy uses automated systems or delegates childcare to specialized groups. The actual parents or guardians barely interact with their young ones outside of scheduled development sessions. Daehyun stared at him. That's horrible. That's efficiency, Hyunji said. At least that's what they call it. But I've been seeing the results in my medical bay. Anxiety, stress disorders, attachment issues. The young ones from a dozen different species all showing similar problems. Because they need what the cubs needed. Someone to be there. Someone to tell them they're safe. Exactly. Hyunji leaned forward. What you did last night? That's what humans still do. We never stopped raising our own children. We never optimized it away. Over the next week, Daehyun worked on his protocol. He studied each species in the junior wing. He learned about their sleep needs, their comfort requirements, their fears. The Felkar cubs needed closeness and rhythmic sounds. So he set up a system in their room with recordings of purring and breathing. He made sure they could sleep together instead of in separate spaces. He visited them each night to check on them and hum for a few minutes, but word spread. Other students started appearing at his door. Roku and Sana were krill, amphibious beings who needed high humidity. They couldn't sleep without what they called water stories, flowing narratives about safe rivers and warm pools. Their parents used to tell these stories every night. Here they had nothing. Daehyun learned to tell water stories. He wasn't very good at first. The translator had trouble with some of the concepts. But he practiced, and the 2 krill cubs started sleeping better. Then came Voss, a young thornback. His species was reptilian and territorial. Voss couldn't settle down without someone checking the perimeter of his space. On his home world, adults would inspect the sleeping area and declare it safe. Here no one did that, so Daehyun did. Every evening he would walk through Voss's room, checking the corners, looking under the bed, examining the door locks. Then he would say, "Perimeter secure. You can rest now." It felt silly at first, but Voss needed it, and it worked. Jiwoo helped him create recordings and routines. Hyunji provided medical data showing that the student's health was improving dramatically. Sleep cycles normalized, stress hormones dropped, academic performance rose. After 2 weeks, Daehyun had personally helped 12 students from 6 different species. Each one needed something different, but the core was always the same. They needed someone to care, someone to be present, someone to promise that tomorrow would come and they would be safe until then. Vice-Chancellor Tixarak called him back to her office. "Your results are remarkable," she said. "We are making your program official. Other advisors will learn your methods." "I'm not sure everyone can do this," Daehyun said. "It's not really a method. It's just caring about them. Then we will find advisors who can care." Tixarak's arms moved, and what he'd learned was approval. 2 more humans are arriving next week. Sunwoo and Hana. They are psychology students. They will assist you. Why more humans specifically? Because, the Vice-Chancellor said slowly, you understand something that the rest of us have forgotten. Your species never stopped being parents. You carry your young for months inside your bodies. You feed them from your own flesh. You sacrifice sleep and safety to protect them. This is not efficient, but it creates something we have lost. What's that? The instinct to comfort. Tixarak turned back to her work. Teach it to others if you can. We need it. That night, Dae-hyun did his rounds through the junior wing. He hummed for the Felkar cubs, told water stories to the krill, checked Voss's perimeter, sat quietly with a silicate student named Brix, who didn't sleep but needed someone nearby during meditation. The corridors were quieter now. No more crying outside the dorms. No more scared children huddled in hallways. As he returned to his quarters, Dae-hyun thought about what Thixarak had said. The galaxy had optimized everything, made it efficient, made it logical, but somewhere along the way they'd optimized away love. Humans hadn't. Humans were still inefficient and emotional and way too attached to their young. They still sang lullabies and checked for monsters under beds and promised that everything would be okay. Maybe that made them strange. Maybe it made them primitive, or maybe it made them exactly what the galaxy needed. Dae-hyun smiled and went to sleep. Tomorrow would bring more children who needed help, and he would be there for them. That was what humans did. The emergency alarms went off during third shift when most of the station slept. Dae-hyun jerked awake to red lights flashing in his quarters. His communication device screamed urgent messages in 3 languages before settling on Korean. All personnel to emergency stations. Incoming damaged vessel. Survivors require immediate assistance. He threw on his clothes and ran for the docking bay. The corridors filled with staff members, all moving quickly but calmly. The station had drills for this. Everyone knew their job. Yeonji was already in the medical bay preparing equipment. Transport ship hit debris, she said quickly. Life support failed. They had to evacuate fast. How many? 15 juveniles. 6 different species. No adults made it. Dae-hyun's stomach dropped. No adults at all? The ship's crew got the children into escape pods first. Then the ship broke apart. Yeonji's face was grim. The kids have been in those pods for 6 hours, alone and terrified. The rescue ships brought them in one by one. Dae-hyun watched through the bay windows as the small pods docked. Each one opened to reveal frightened children. Some were injured. All of them were traumatized. There were 2 more Felkar cubs crying for their pride. 3 krill juveniles, their skin dry and cracking from stress. A pair of thornbacks clinging to each other. 4 beings from a species Dae-hyun had never seen before, small and scaled with too many eyes, and 1 tiny creature that looked like it was made of blue crystal, completely silent and still. The medical team worked fast. They treated injuries, gave fluids, ran scans. Physically, most of the children would be fine. A few broken bones, some cuts and bruises, nothing life-threatening. But their minds were a different story. The 2 Felkar cubs wouldn't stop crying. They screamed for their parents in a language the translator couldn't fully interpret. The krill juveniles had gone completely still, barely breathing. The thornbacks couldn't be separated without both of them panicking. The unknown species huddled together and wouldn't let anyone near them, and the crystal child just stared at nothing. We've given them sedatives, one of the medical staff said. But they're not working. Their stress levels are too high. The medication can't override their fear. Yeonji pulled Dae-hyun aside. The psychological trauma is severe. They watched their guardians die. They spent hours alone in the dark. Our standard counseling protocols aren't touching this. What do the counselors recommend? Isolation until they stabilize, medication, observation. Yeonji looked exhausted. The same things that don't work. Vice Chancellor Thixarak appeared in the doorway. Behind her stood Chancellor Vexmore, an architect who rarely left his meditation chambers. The architects were an ancient species that believed in logic above all else. They had no concept of emotional comfort. Advisor Dae-hyun, Thixarak said, "We need your help." Vexmore made a sound like rocks grinding together. "This is unnecessary. The juveniles simply need time to process their trauma." "They need more than that," Dae-hyun said. "They need someone to help them feel safe again. Safety is an illusion. They must learn to function without it." Dae-hyun stared at the Chancellor. They're children. Children who just watched everyone they knew die. Then they must grow stronger from the experience. For a moment, Dae-hyun wanted to hit something. This being stood there talking about traumatized kids like they were machines that needed reprogramming. But getting angry wouldn't help the children. "Vice Chancellor," he said carefully, "give me 48 hours. Let me and the other humans try our methods." Thixarak looked between him and Vexmore. "The human methods have worked before. I am authorizing it." She held up an arm when Vexmore started to object. "You may observe if you wish, Chancellor." but do not interfere. Sunwoo and Hana arrived within the hour. Both of them looked terrified but determined. Jiwoo came too, bringing every translator device and cultural database he could carry. Okay, Daehyun said, gathering them together. We don't know their cultures. We don't know their sleep songs or their comfort rituals. But we know they're scared. We know they need someone to be with them. So what do we do? Hana asked. She was young, barely 20, and this was way beyond anything she'd studied. We do what humans do. We stay with them. We let them know they're not alone. They divided up the survivors. Daehyun took the 2 Felkar cubs. Hyunji worked with the krill. Sunwoo sat with the thornbacks. Hana tried to reach the unknown species. Jiwoo stayed with the crystal child. The first few hours were brutal. The Felkar cubs Daehyun was with wouldn't stop screaming. They were older than Tala and the others, maybe 14 in human years. They'd lost their entire pride in the disaster. Everything they'd known was gone. Daehyun didn't try to stop their crying. He just sat with them. He kept his voice low and steady. I'm here. You're safe now. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you're safe. The cubs didn't believe him. Why would they? But he kept saying it anyway. He started humming. The same tune he'd used with Tala. It probably meant nothing to these cubs. It wasn't their pride song. But it was something. A sound that said someone was there. Someone was keeping watch. Hours passed. The cubs' screaming became crying. The crying became whimpering. Daehyun's voice grew hoarse, but he kept humming. In the next room, Hyunji told water stories to the krill. She didn't know the proper ones, so she made them up. Stories about safe oceans and warm currents, places where young krill could swim without fear. Sunwoo checked perimeters for the thornbacks over and over. North wall secure, south wall secure, door locked, window sealed. You're safe. Your brother is safe. Everyone is safe. Hana sat with the unknown species and simply existed near them. She didn't try to touch them or force interaction. She just let them see her there, breathing calmly, not a threat. Slowly, one of them reached out a tiny clawed hand. Hana took it gently. Jiwoo had the hardest job. The crystal child didn't speak. Didn't move. Just stared. He tried everything he could think of. Finally, he just started talking. About Earth, about his home city. About his little niece who loved to collect rocks. Meaningless human stories, but spoken in a gentle voice. The crystal child blinked. After 12 hours, some of the survivors started to calm. Not much, but their heart rates dropped slightly. Their breathing evened out just a bit. It was progress. The humans worked in shifts. When Daehyun's voice gave out completely, Sunwoo took over with the Felkar cubs. When Hyunji needed sleep, Hana continued the water stories. They kept a constant presence with each group of survivors. They brought blankets from Earth, soft ones that smelled like human laundry detergent. They played music from their homeworld, gentle and rhythmic. They dimmed the lights to comfortable levels instead of the harsh medical bay lighting. None of it was in the protocol manuals. All of it was just human instinct. The same instinct that made them check on their own children at night. That made them sing lullabies and tell bedtime stories and promise that the monsters weren't real. After 24 hours, one of the Felkar cubs finally fell asleep. Just for an hour, but it was real sleep, not unconsciousness from exhaustion. Daehyun nearly cried with relief. After 30 hours, the krill juvenile started responding to Hyunji's questions. Simple things, yes or no, but it was communication. After 36 hours, one of the unknown species asked Hana for food. It was the first time any of them had eaten since the rescue. The crystal child took longer, but after 40 hours it finally spoke to Jiwoo. Why do you stay? Because you shouldn't be alone right now, Jiwoo said. I am always alone. My species does not gather. Maybe not, but nobody should have to be alone when they're scared. The crystal child considered this. You are strange. Yeah, humans are like that. By the 48th hour, all 15 survivors were stable. Not healed, not okay, but alive and beginning to process what had happened to them. They ate, they slept in short stretches. They acknowledged the humans who stayed with them. Vice-Chancellor Thixarak came to check on them. Chancellor Vexmore followed, silent and observing. Your methods worked, Thixarak said to Daehyun. When our standard protocols failed completely, you succeeded. We just sat with them, Daehyun said. His voice was rough from all the humming and talking. We let them know someone cared. Vexmore finally spoke. I do not understand how this helps. I know, Daehyun said, too tired to be diplomatic. That's the problem. The Chancellor stared at him with eyes like black stones. Then, surprisingly, he left without another word. Thixarak's arms moved in what might have been approval. Rest now, all of you. We will handle the survivors' care from here. No, Daehyun said. We stay until they don't need us anymore. That could be weeks. Then we stay for weeks. The Vice-Chancellor looked at the 5 exhausted humans. Then she looked at the 15 survivors who were finally resting peacefully. Very well. We will arrange proper support for you. As Thixarak left, Hana slumped against the wall. I've never been this tired in my life. Me neither, Sunwoo agreed. Worth it though, Jiwoo said, watching the crystal child sleep. Daehyun nodded. They'd save these children. Not with medicine or technology, just with presence and patience and the stubborn human insistence that no child should face darkness alone. It was the most human thing they could have done. The news spread fast. Within a week, ships arrived from a dozen different worlds. They carried scientists, psychologists, and cultural specialists. Everyone wanted to understand what the humans had done. How 5 tired people had reached 15 traumatized children when all the advanced medicine and counseling in the galaxy had failed. Dr. Yuna arrived on the 3rd ship. She was a xenopsychologist who'd spent her career studying child development across species. She was also human, which surprised Daehyun. He'd thought they were the only humans working in this field. There are more of us than you think, Yuna said, smiling. We're just spread out. Most species don't think humans have anything useful to contribute to child psychology. We're too emotional, they say, too attached to outdated care methods. They sat in the commissary while Yuna reviewed the data. The survivors were doing better each day. Still hurt, still grieving, but healing in ways the medical staff hadn't thought possible. The standard approach across most of the galaxy is interesting, Yuna said, scrolling through her tablet. When children experience trauma, the focus is on cognitive restructuring, helping them understand what happened logically, processing the event through analysis. That doesn't work? Daehyun asked. It works eventually, but it ignores something fundamental. Before you can think through trauma, you need to feel safe enough to think at all, and that's where most species fail now. Because they don't know how to make children feel safe anymore. Exactly. Yuna pulled up a chart showing different species' child care evolution. Look at this. 2,000 years ago, most species raised their children directly. Parents or family groups provided constant care. Then came efficiency movements. Why waste the time of productive adults on child care when machines and specialists could do it better? The chart showed the shift happening across dozens of worlds. Automated nurseries, care facilities run by AI, professional child rearers who handled dozens of young ones at once with perfect efficiency. So what happened? They optimized away the bond, Yuna said quietly. Children grew up healthy and educated, but they never learned what it felt like to be truly cared for. And when they became adults, they didn't know how to provide that care either. The knowledge was lost. But humans didn't do that. No, humans are stubborn about their children. Even when we went to space, even when we had the technology to automate everything, we kept doing it ourselves. We carried our babies. We sang to them. We stayed up all night when they were sick. Other species thought we were backward. Maybe we were, Daehyun said, but it kept something alive that everyone else lost. Yuna nodded. Emotional attunement, the ability to read what another being needs and respond to it, not because a manual tells you to, but because you feel it. Humans still have that. We never optimized it away. She called a meeting with all the researchers who'd arrived. The room filled with beings from a dozen species. Insectoids, crystalline entities, amphibious krill, and more. All of them brilliant. All of them confused. We've reviewed the humans' methods extensively, one researcher said. We cannot identify the active therapeutic component. They simply stayed near the survivors. Spoke to them. Made sounds. How does this produce measurable psychological improvement? Yuna stood up. Because the active component isn't a technique. It's presence. Real emotional presence. The survivors didn't need someone to fix them. They needed someone to be with them while they hurt. That is inefficient, another researcher objected. The human personnel could have treated multiple patients in the time they spent with these 15. Could they have? Yuna pulled up health data. Because before the humans intervened, your standard treatments weren't working at all. The survivors were declining despite optimal medical care. Sometimes inefficiency is actually the only thing that works. The discussion went on for hours. Some researchers understood immediately. Others struggled with the concept. How could something as simple as sitting with a scared child be more effective than proper psychological intervention? But the data didn't lie. The survivors who'd been cared for by humans were recovering faster than anyone had predicted. They were eating, sleeping, and beginning to engage with the world again. Chancellor Vexmore attended one of these meetings. He sat in silence for most of it, his ancient stone-like face unreadable. Finally, he spoke. I wish to observe the humans working, directly. It wasn't a request. Daehyun wanted to refuse, but Thixarak approved it. So Vexmore followed him on his evening rounds through the junior wing. Daehyun went to Tala's room first. The Felkar cubs were doing well, but they still needed their bedtime routine. He sat with them while they settled in for sleep, hummed their favorite tune, made sure they felt safe. Vexmore watched without comment. They visited the krill next. Hyunji was there telling one of her water stories. The young krill listened with their eyes half closed, their skin shifting through peaceful colors. The story is factually inaccurate, Vexmore noted after they left. There are no warm currents in the northern seas of their homeworld. It's not about facts, Daehyun said. It's about the feeling, the safety and peace of warm water. But it is false. It's comfort. They checked on Voss and the other thornbacks. Sunwoo was doing his perimeter check, thoroughly examining every corner and seal. Everything secure. You can rest. The perimeter was already secure, Vexmore said. Station sensors monitor all entry points constantly. But Voss needs to see someone check, Daehyun explained. He needs the ritual. Rituals are inefficient, rituals are human. And apparently that matters. The last stop was the medical bay where the 15 survivors still stayed. They were much better now, but still healing. Jiwoo was there with the crystal child whose name was Keel. They were playing a simple game with colored lights. Your move, Keel said, placing a blue light. Okay. Jiwoo placed a red light. Got me? Keel made a sound that might have been a laugh. You are not very good at this game. Nope. But you're smiling, so I don't mind losing. Vexmore watched this for several minutes. Then he spoke directly to Keel. You were unresponsive for 40 hours. What changed? Keel's glow dimmed slightly, remembering. Jiwoo stayed, even when I did not speak, even when I could not move. He stayed and talked to me. Why did this matter? Because I believed I should have died with my family unit. I believed I was meant to be alone forever. Keel's lights shifted through sad colors. But Jiwoo showed me that being alone is a choice. And someone chose to not let me be alone. That made me want to stay alive. The Chancellor was quiet for a long time after that. They returned to his chambers and Daehyun expected to be dismissed. Instead, Vexmore asked him to sit. My species is old, the Chancellor said. We have existed for millions of years. We have achieved great things through logic and reason. We removed emotion from our civilization 20,000 years ago. We thought it made us stronger, but, Daehyun prompted, but we have not created any new life in 5,000 years. Our young are grown in chambers and educated by machines. They are brilliant and capable. They are also empty. Vexmore's stone eyes fixed on Daehyun. We do not know how to fix this. We thought it was simply our nature. It's not nature. It's choice. You chose efficiency over connection. And you think connection is superior? I think connection is necessary. You can't optimize away the need to be cared for. You can't logic away fear or loneliness or grief. Those things need another being to witness them. To say, I see you hurting and I'm here. Vexmore sat in silence. Then teach us what? Teach us what you know. The architects will learn this human method of care. We will bring it back to our world. Daehyun stared at him. You want me to teach your entire species how to care for children? Yes, and we will not be the only ones. I have spoken with representatives from 14 other worlds. They all see what I see now. The galaxy has lost something essential. You humans kept it alive. The Chancellor leaned forward. Will you help us remember? 3 days later, the Galactic Collective called for a formal inquiry. Not to punish the humans, but to decide if their methods should become standard practice across all Academy stations. Representatives came from hundreds of worlds. Daehyun, Hyunji, Jiwoo, Sunwoo, and Hana stood before the assembly. Behind them sat the survivors they'd helped. And behind those survivors sat Tala and dozens of other students from the junior wing. The lead administrator asked the humans to explain their methods. Daehyun took a breath and began, We don't really have a method, he said honestly. We just do what feels right. We stay with children who are scared. We comfort them. We promise them they're safe, and we keep that promise. We don't do it because it's efficient. We do it because they need it. Because everyone needs it. One by one, the students testified. They talked about nightmares that stopped. About feeling safe for the first time away from home. About learning that being vulnerable was okay because someone would be there. Tala spoke last. Before advisor Daehyun came, I thought I was broken. I thought something was wrong with me because I could not sleep alone. But he showed me that needing others is not weakness. It is simply life. We are all connected. That is what humans remember that we forgot. The vote took 3 hours. When it finished, the result was clear. The Daehyun Protocol, as they called it. 5 years changed everything. Daehyun stood in his office looking at reports from 300 academy stations across the galaxy. Every single one had implemented the new care protocols. Every single one reported the same results. Healthier students, better academic performance, and a dramatic decrease in psychological problems. But the changes went deeper than just the academy. Entire civilizations were restructuring how they raised their young. The architects had reopened family dwellings that had been closed for millennia. The Crystalline Collective was teaching parents how to stay with their children during formation periods. Even the efficiency-obsessed Krill had brought back water story circles. The galaxy was remembering what it meant to care. Hyunji came into his office carrying 2 cups of tea. You're going to be late for the ceremony. I know. Just reviewing the final numbers. Stop that. Today's not about numbers. She handed him the tea. Today's about celebrating what we built. Outside the window, ships were arriving for the graduation ceremony. This would be the first class to complete their entire academy education under the new protocols. Tala's class, the cubs who'd once cried outside the dorms. Daehyun sipped his tea and watched the ship's dock. 5 years ago, he'd been a nervous new advisor who just wanted to help 3 scared Felkar cubs sleep. Now he was the director of student wellness for the entire academy system. He still wasn't quite sure how that had happened. You ready for your speech? Hyunji asked. I don't know what to say. What do you tell people who changed the galaxy? You tell them the truth. That they taught us how to care again. That's enough. The ceremony was held in the main amphitheater. Thousands of beings packed the space, representing hundreds of species. Parents and guardians who'd traveled from across known space to see their children graduate. It was the largest gathering the station had ever hosted. Daehyun sat on the stage next to Vice Chancellor Thixarak and Chancellor Vexmore. Thixarak had become a close friend over the years. Vexmore had become something else, a student. The ancient architect had spent the last 5 years learning everything he could about emotional care, then taking that knowledge back to his people. The graduates filed in wearing ceremonial robes from their various cultures. Felkar in pride colors, Krill in water silk, Thornbacks in territorial markers. Dozens of species, all young adults now, all confident and capable. Tala was the class speaker. She walked to the podium with her head high, her stripes glowing steady and bright. She was beautiful, Daehyun thought, strong and sure of herself in ways she never could have been 5 years ago. We are the first, Tala began, her voice carrying through the amphitheater. The first to grow up under care protocols that recognized something simple. We needed someone to tell us we were safe. We needed presence, not just protocols. Connection, not just correction. She looked directly at Daehyun. 5 years ago, I stood outside the dorms crying. I could not sleep. I could not learn. I could not be who I was meant to be because I was too scared and alone. Then a human came. He didn't have answers. He didn't have solutions. He just sat with us and hummed until we could rest. Tala's stripes brightened. That human taught the galaxy something we'd forgotten. That caring for others isn't weakness. That taking time to comfort a scared child isn't inefficiency. That sometimes the most advanced thing you can do is simply be present when someone needs you. The amphitheater was completely silent. Thousands of beings listening to one young Felkar speak truth. We are graduating today because someone cared enough to help us sleep, to tell us stories, to check our perimeters and promise us tomorrow would come. That care gave us the foundation to become who we are now. Tala looked out at the crowd. And we will take that gift forward. We will care for others the way we were cared for. We will remember what the humans taught us. The applause lasted for 5 full minutes. Parents and guardians stood. honoring not just the graduates but the revolution in care they represented. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Daehyun found himself surrounded by beings wanting to thank him. Parents whose children were thriving now, educators who'd learned new methods, even government officials from worlds that were implementing care reforms. One Felkar elder approached him. She was ancient, her stripes faded with age. "I am Tala's grandmother," she said through the translator. "I came to see my pride child graduate, but also to meet the human who saved her." "I just helped her sleep," Daehyun said, embarrassed. "You gave her more than sleep. You gave her the gift of knowing she matters, that someone will stay when she is afraid. This is the greatest gift any being can receive." The elder touched his hand with her paw, a gesture of deep respect. "You have our eternal gratitude." As the night went on, Daehyun slipped away from the crowd. He walked through the junior wing dormitories, now quiet as the young students slept peacefully inside. The hallways that once echoed with crying were silent, except for the gentle hum of life support systems. He found Jiwoo sitting outside one of the rooms, keeping watch over a new group of students who'd just arrived last week. Some things didn't change. There would always be scared children needing help adjusting to life away from home. "How are they?" Daehyun asked. "Getting there. The two krill finally fell asleep an hour ago. The thornback still checks the door every few minutes, but he's calming down. You didn't have to take the night shift during graduation." Jiwoo shrugged. "These kids need someone. Everyone else was at the ceremony. Besides, I wanted to be here. This is the important work." Daehyun sat down next to him. They stayed there in comfortable silence, two humans keeping watch while alien children slept safely inside. "Do you ever think about how weird this all is?" Jiwoo asked after a while. "That humans became famous across the galaxy for something as simple as tucking kids into bed? All the time. We didn't bring advanced weapons or amazing technology. We just brought the willingness to sit with scared children. And somehow that changed everything." "Yeah, somehow it did." The next morning, Daehyun had breakfast with Tala and some of her classmates. They were adults now, ready to go out into the galaxy. Some would become scientists, others teachers or explorers or leaders, but all of them carried something special, the knowledge that they were cared for and the ability to care for others in turn. "What will you do now?" Tala asked him. "Keep doing this, I guess. There are always more students coming, more children who need help adjusting. But you've trained hundreds of advisors now. They can do the work." "They can, but I like being here. Directly helping kids, not just managing programs." Daehyun smiled. "Maybe I'm not ambitious enough for a proper human." "Or maybe you know what's actually important," Mira said. She was graduating top of her class in xenobiology. "Everyone wants to do big things. Change worlds. Make history. But you did all that by just caring about us." After they left, Daehyun returned to his rounds. He visited the new students with Jiwoo, checked in with Sunwoo and Hana, who now ran their own training programs, spent time with the 15 survivors from 5 years ago, most of whom had stayed at the academy to help others. Keel, the crystal child who'd once been completely unresponsive, now worked as a student counselor. "I know what it feels like to be alone in darkness," Keel said. "So I help others find light, like Jiwoo did for me." That evening, Daehyun did something he hadn't done in years. He walked to the observation deck and looked out at the stars. Earth was out there somewhere, impossibly far away. He wondered what his family would think if they could see him now. Just a xenobiologist who wanted to help alien kids sleep, somehow becoming the person who taught the galaxy how to care again. His communication device buzzed. A message from the Galactic Collective. They wanted him to speak at a conference on child development. 700 species attending, millions watching remotely. He almost declined. He wasn't good at big speeches, didn't like being the center of attention, but then he thought about Tala's speech today, about how she'd told the truth simply and directly. Maybe he could do that too. Daehyun accepted the invitation. He'd tell them about the night 3 Felkar cubs cried outside the dorms, about how he hadn't known what to do except try to help, about how that one small act of caring had rippled outward until it touched billions of lives. He'd tell them that the most human thing, the thing that made his species special, wasn't strength or intelligence or stubbornness. It was the willingness to sit with someone who was scared and promise them they weren't alone. That night, he did his final rounds through the junior wing. The hallways were peaceful. Through the doorways he could see students sleeping safely, Felkar cubs curled together, their stripes glowing contentedly, krill juveniles floating in their humidity chambers dreaming water dreams. Thornbacks resting in their perfectly checked perimeters. A new student appeared in the hallway. A small being from a species Daehyun had never seen before, with too many legs and eyes that glowed softly in the dark. "Can't sleep?" he asked gently. The small being made a chittering sound. The translator picked it up as fear and uncertainty and deep loneliness. Daehyun smiled and crouched down. "It's okay. Let's find a way to help you feel safe. Can you tell me what you need?" As the small being tried to explain through broken galactic common,